Welcome to Diaspora, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta. Each week, we sit down with individuals who have made the journey over and explore their experiences, their challenges, and their triumphs. We delve into their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while staying connected to their roots. Today, we're joined by Khaja Ahmed, a leading cybersecurity expert who has held senior positions at Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and interestingly at Gemini, which is a cryptocurrency platform. Something interesting about him is that he holds several patents, and we will talk about that later in the show. Originally from Hyderabad in southern India, he came to the US to do his master's degree, and he spent time in New England and California before making Seattle his home, where he's been for the last 24 years. With that, let's dive into this week's conversation. So, Khaja, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aditya. Great to be here.
A question I ask all my guests is what American city would Hyderabad be if it was an American city?
I don't know if you know this, but it's pretty well known in Hyderabad that Chicago is called Chicago Sharif.
Okay.
So that's sort of like a term of endearment for Chicago because so many Hyderabadis moved to Chicago.
Yeah.
So in
Interesting.
terms of, I guess, culture and cuisine, Chicago would be the thing. But having grown up in Hyderabad, the Hyderabad I grew up in, the one little town that I felt reminded me of my childhood in Hyderabad is Pleasanton, California.
Okay.
So,
Very cool.
so I will nominate two cities, a
Yeah.
big one and a little.
Totally fine. I joke on the show that Washington is the fourth largest Telugu state in the world after
Which it is.
after Andhra and Telangana and Texas. Right, this is the fourth
That's right.
largest state. So we'll come back to Hyderabad a little bit later, but I want to know the origin of your name. If you could explain what your name means and where it comes from.
Yeah, it's a pretty common name in India among the Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
And it, I believe, has Sufi/Turkish origin.
Okay.
It meant teacher/master. So you will see all these saints, So that's kind of.
Is it sometimes used as a prefix?
It is. In fact, it
Yeah.
was a title
Okay.
for, I guess, a religious head or
Yeah,
something.
I learned very recently that even the Ahmed after the name can be a suffix and is not necessarily a last name.
Well, the whole notion of first name, last name is a
Yeah.
very American
It's a
slash
very
Western
Western
thing.
thing. Yeah.
You had one given name and then
Yeah.
you tagged on a village name or a
Yeah.
tribe name. And
Yeah.
there's so many variations of name origins across the world
Yeah.
that if you try and confine everything to the
Sure.
first name, middle initial, last name thing, you might end up distorting everything.
I explain to people that my last name is an occupational last name. Actually, it's a caste-based last name, but they won't understand it here. So I
That's
say it's an
exactly
occupational last name. It means accountant, broadly. And then I talk about how I've had 4 generations of accountants before me, and then that makes sense to them. So thanks for sharing that. Going back to Hyderabad, so it was one of the larger princely states in India. We had over 500 of them, but some were like as country-sized princely states, and some were like as small as a few villages. So tell us more about the history of Hyderabad before British rule and the whole royal families of Hyderabad, that angle, and then we can talk about Hyderabad during and then after British rule.
Boy, I mean, it's an ancient city where the ruling class established the Golconda Fort
Yeah.
and sort of made it a defensible, separable princely state. And then, of course, Aurangzeb was the one who ultimately conquered Hyderabad state.
For our listeners, Aurangzeb was one of the last Mughal empires
Yeah.
that ruled over most of North India and probably was the biggest contiguous empire in the 13th to 16th centuries.
Right.
Yeah.
He was, I think, pretty much the largest, that all the way from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, as they say. Yeah. And he did that through expansion and conquest and things like that.
Yeah.
So Hyderabad was one of the states that fell under him. But then again, after him, I think his descendants couldn't hold on to this large empire and it just
Right.
fragmented. So during the British rule, it was basically the Asif Jai dynasty.
Okay.
If you've been to Hyderabad, you have these Qutub Shahi tombs,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The 7 tombs of the
Yeah.
Qutub Shahi kings.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that led to the Nizams, the Usman Ali Pasha, who was the last of the
Right.
kings.
I read somewhere, I'm not sure this is fact checked, but it was such a strong princely state, it had its own air force, is what I've heard. A lot of them had their own armies, but it also had its own air force and its own currency.
It did.
Yeah.
And here are some of the more interesting things about Bad. Very big in polo. I played polo for the
Okay.
Andhra Pradesh Riding Club.
Okay.
So to me, it's kind of a fact of pride that there was a time when the Nizam could buy absolutely the best horses in the world. Bidding on horses in the stud farms and breeding farms in England and Ireland would begin after the Nizam was done buying his horses.
Okay.
So the net result was that at one point, Hyderabad 4 versus the rest of the world, Hyderabad won. I think, if I remember rightly, the team was the Kashmiri prince, Raja Hanut Singh, and there was a couple of military guys in the Nizam's army, Farooq Bijli, and then Colonel Hamidullah, I think, and then one other guy whose name I can't remember. But they were very big in polo and, of course, now.
A lot of the princely states, the rulers played polo. It was considered a royal sport.
That's right. I don't know if it came from the British tradition of training military officers, because the theory was it makes you a better decision maker in the field.
Yeah.
And teaches you about courage and
Sure.
action and so forth, which is true.
Yeah, that makes sense. Our previous guest also played polo.
Oh,
So I've had 20-something episodes with no talk of polo, and today we've talked about it twice. So that's great. At independence, Hyderabad was one of the states that initially did not want to join the
Correct.
Indian Union. Can you speak more to that story and maybe what reasons would that have been, and then what eventually happened?
You know, it's kind of an unfortunate thing that the way the country split up into pieces, West Pakistan, East Pakistan, and the contention you see in Kashmir today is all based on, I think, a division which was sort of exacerbated by the British policy of divide and rule.
Of course.
The Hindu versus Muslim thing.
Of course.
And by the way, at the risk of taking a detour here, that is still going on. There are still parts of the world which are, I think, easy to oppress and manipulate because it's easy to divide the people there. And that's what happened to India. So Hyderabad, being a Muslim state, chose to remain independent, not become
part of India.
When I say it was a Muslim state, what I should say and clarify is that it was under Muslim rule more or less contiguously for several hundred years. So the culture was very Muslim influenced.
Yeah.
But of course, the population was very well integrated. The Hindus and Muslims were extremely well integrated. But Nizam chose to remain independent. But of course, the Indian army wouldn't have it. The Indian government wouldn't have it, which I think ultimately was the right decision. It just makes sense. It's, again, just an opinion.
Yeah.
I think about India, a unified India, which includes West Pakistan, or what is today Pakistan, and what is today Bangladesh. Imagine the economic powerhouse that would be, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of unfortunate that things landed where they landed.
Yeah, I think also the fact that Hyderabad was surrounded by India on all sides would have made any plans to even attach itself to Pakistan very difficult.
Sure.
Right?
That was never viable. And that was never the intention. The intention was to remain independent as an independent nation, which of course happens in Africa, in Europe. There are a lot of landlocked countries. So that in itself is not the issue, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing all that context. Hyderabad, I've noticed, has its own dialect of Hindi, the way it is spoken. And of course, Urdu is probably prevalent as well. And as a Bombay person who speaks terrible Hindi, our slang version is Bombay Hindi. I shouldn't be one to talk. But could you share some of the sort of like, I won't say nuances, but some of the oddities of Hyderabadi Hindi? And maybe what influenced it to be what it is? Like in Bombay, it's very clear. It's a Gujarati and Marathi influence that comes into Hindi. But is there similar such influence in Hyderabadi Hindi? Once you explain the oddities.
You know, I mean, every region, at least in the past, would evolve its local culture.
Yeah.
And language is a part of the culture.
Yeah.
So cuisine, language, attire, everything sort of evolves locally. Used to evolve locally. In a hyper-connected world that we live in today, it's different. But back then, I have no idea, frankly, why the Urdu in Hyderabad evolved as differently as, let's say, it did from Lucknow. The further north you go in the Urdu-speaking cultures, the greater you see the Persian influence.
Sure.
Further south you go, the Persian influence diminishes. Right. And it's, I suspect, maybe some combination of Telugu and the local southern languages. Right?
Yeah.
I have no idea. We should, pure speculation on my part.
I've discussed this with another guest from Hyderabad before. If you haven't watched it, you should watch Hyderabadi Harry Potter on Instagram. It's these like summary like Harry Potter videos, but like everybody has a Hyderabadi Hindi accent, all the characters, and it's so funny you'll fall laughing. So I'm gonna put a link to the show notes. I think one of my episodes already has the link, but I'll put it again so that our listeners can listen to it. Do you go back to Hyderabad often?
Used to go at least once a year for many years. Although when I first came to the US, which was back in '88, I think I didn't go back for 5 years.
Yeah.
Green card, and
Yeah.
it was dirt poor,
Sure.
one of those dirt poor graduate students.
Yeah.
And then I think after my first trip, I didn't make my second trip until another 5 years.
Right.
So let's say for the first 11 years of my stay in the US, I just made one trip. But after that, we made it a point, especially when the kids started growing up. We
Yeah.
wanted them to understand their roots. Frankly, we wanted our kids to understand us.
Sure.
Why is your father and your mother the way they are? So I think that was the motivation. But
Yeah.
we take the kids every year, at least
Yeah.
once a year.
I used to go to Hyderabad regularly because I was a guest lecturer at ISB Hyderabad. I
Oh,
was
yeah.
teaching Salesforce strategies. Then I visited after a long time. That city's changed a lot, and not necessarily for the worse. Like, the growing pains that typically cities have in India, especially Bangalore being the worst case scenario, I think Hyderabad's handled a bit better. And I observed this because I'm a minor in urban planning. So I noticed cities and grid patterns and transit systems a little bit differently. And I think the Gujarat cities and Hyderabad have probably done the best job in anticipating needs of infrastructure down the line. And it usually ranks a little bit higher on quality of life compared to Bangalore, Chennai, whatever. So that's my observation.
You may be right, and I think I can guess why, right? I mean, in India, we talk about the old city and the new city, Purana Shahar, Naya Shahar,
Yes.
right? I mean, and I think the strategy that Hyderabad used was each iteration or version of the city builds a little bit outside of the city.
Yeah.
So in some adjacent space is where
Sure.
the new city comes up and sort of gets connected to the old city. So there was the old city, the Purana Hyderabad,
Yeah.
where the ruling class, the Nizam and all lived. And then there's the new city. Now, I think the latest iteration, which is called the high-tech city,
Yeah.
was really a sort of little village, maybe some distance from Hyderabad,
Sure.
Gachibowli and places
Yeah.
like that. And that became high-tech city. And now it's all connected, right?
Yeah.
I think unlike other cities, unlike Bombay, for example, or Bangalore, which tried to renew in place
Right.
rather than, of course, they expanded ways also, but the city center remained the same, I think.
Yeah, that's a very good way to put it. In Bangalore, that's certainly a problem. In Bombay, we had ocean on three sides.
Correct.
And a lot of people don't know Bombay is an island,
Yeah.
which is overflowed onto the mainland. And we have mountains, Western Ghats, so that again, not much space to expand. But Ahmedabad has done what you described for Hyderabad. So they just laid down a big ring road and said now all these places are accessible which weren't earlier. And here's a bus rapid system, here's a metro line, here's a sewage line. Go build wherever you want. And I think that's one of the reasons. It's a very interesting challenge to solve urban planning in India because you have 50 cities over a million people, 55 cities or something like that. And you're trying to improve the quality of life of 1.5 billion people.
Right.
And I see sometimes the infrastructure needs of the population overtake certain things that will be an issue later. So I'll give you an example. Cities in this part of the world, they have freeways running through downtown. And slowly and steadily, they're all ripping them up, putting them underground, like we did with the 99 in Seattle.
Right.
So that there's a waterfront, there's a public space.
Right.
In Bombay, since there's no space to begin with, they've just reclamated a bunch of land and made it into a coastal road. So now the coast is a highway. And sure, you have some public space here and there, but for a city of 30 million people, it's never going to be enough. So I appreciate the conversation about cities and growth. It always lights me up. Like you lighted up when we talked about Polo. So I want to briefly touch upon growing up in Hyderabad in those days, and then we'll go into a short break. What was growing up like back then, and how was your childhood like, and what brought you to the point of deciding to move abroad?
I mean, I had a fantastic childhood. I couldn't be more fortunate. Went to a very good school, St. George's Grammar School. It's an Anglican church back then. The Hyderabad I grew up in and the Hyderabad today are more different than you could imagine.
Yeah.
Culture, everything, culture, cuisine, the people, everything's different, which is not surprising. I mean, decades later,
Right.
no city is going to be, able to preserve its character. London today is not the London that I visited, let's say, 35 years
Sure.
ago. It's very different. So that's not surprising. But the Hyderabad I grew up in, the climate was fabulous. It seemed to hover around the low to mid 70s all the time. So it was fantastic climate. Water was plentiful. Traffic wasn't bad at all. And I went to this school, which I think is just amazing. I feel like everything I've learned in life, whether it's computer science or cryptography or anything else, I was able to do because of the love of reading and the ability to read anything and comprehend it,
Yeah.
and the ability to do some basic math. If you can add, multiply, divide,
Sure.
subtract, and if you can read, there is nothing you cannot understand. You cannot teach yourself.
Yeah.
So I think I had the benefit of a fantastic educational foundation, and I was able to build on it.
With that, let's go into a short break. When we return, we'll continue talking about your move over here and your early days and educational experience in starting with New Hampshire. So we'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Diaspora on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. We're talking to Khaja Ahmed, a senior cybersecurity executive and longtime Seattle resident. Before we get back to talking to him, I want to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find all our episodes in video format there right from the first one. So, there was a very interesting first segment where we talked about all things Hyderabad. What made you decide to study abroad for your master's degree?
I'm probably in that small minority of people of my generation who actually didn't want to leave Hyderabad or India at all.
Yeah.
I was having a great time. I was working for a company called Hinditron, which was at that time the second largest computer company in India.
Okay.
I was regional manager for Andhra Pradesh. By the standards of the time and place, I was making very good money and having a great time.
Yeah.
Except that all my friends moved to the US. So my best friends, my older brother, they all
Yeah.
moved to the US. So I sort of felt left behind, and I was
Sure.
starting to get bored. And my brother, he's a nephrologist. He's in LA.
Was this the 70s?
No, this would have been 86,
Okay.
87. 88 is when I came here.
Okay.
86, 87, everybody came here. My friends came here. And my brother would say, look, if you're in computers, what the hell are you doing in India? Because at that time, the computer industry in India was not quite what it is today.
Non-existent. Yeah.
So I said, all right, well, I figured I'll come do my master's here and then figure out how this works out.
And the most obvious destination was New Hampshire, of all places?
That's the university that accepted me. So,
Sure.
So that was the criteria.
I recently had a guest who went to North Dakota State University, and I joked with him that you wanted to complete this one state first, which is everyone's 50th state to visit. So were there a lot of Indian students back then?
Surprisingly, 2 from Hyderabad.
Okay.
One of whom was, actually both of them were known to me indirectly. One was a friend's friend.
Sure.
And another was, I was a member of this place called the Andhra Pradesh Riding Club.
Yeah.
And there was a gal there. Her older sister was also there.
Yeah.
So I had a bit of a Hyderabad connection and a few Indians, not a lot.
Yeah. For a country our size, our social networks are very deep. So
Right.
it's a lot of people don't get that here. So I had a friend in UT Austin where I did my undergrad who was from San Antonio, 90 minutes away. He didn't know anyone from his high school who was there. And I had a guy who lived on my street in Bombay at UT.
Right.
So I would wave to people and be like, oh yeah, he lives in the street next to me. And he's like, he could not relate to how that would happen. But it's just that we are so connected, and so many degrees of separation are considered the same. One of my guests was an AI entrepreneur. She's my cousin sister's husband's brother's wife. So obviously a close connection by Indian standards. So that's great. I noticed that in colleges where there were few Indian people, all the Indians got along. But in colleges where there were a lot of Indian people like UT, the Gujaratis were separate, the South Indians were separate, the Bombay people were separate. Did you feel like People didn't care about the regional differences when there were few Indians in the college, or did it still
In
matter?
fact, I guess the community was a small community of South Asians, let's say. Indians, Pakistanis, everybody hung out together.
Yeah.
Because similar cuisine, we would
Mhm.
cook together, and,
Yeah.
and you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was your first job after college?
You know, when I graduated, networking was kind of the hot thing, and I wanted to be in networking, except that there was a recession going on. This is 1990, October, when I graduated. And the only company that hired me was a security company. And I was thinking, guards and guns, I don't want to do that. What is this security thing? So they explained to me, no, this is about network security. It's about access control and encrypted traffic and that kind of stuff. So I kind of stumbled into security, and that was absolutely the most, fortunate thing that could have happened to anybody starting a career. Imagine starting a career in cybersecurity in 1990.
Yeah.
Long before anybody understood the importance of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And within 5 years, I knew so much about it. And that's a career that has served me well. And it has given me a lot, intellectual satisfaction,
Yeah.
career success, everything you could imagine.
And was it mostly work that took you to California and Seattle, or were any of those like lifestyle choice decisions?
You know, during that phase of your life, everything is centered around your career and jobs, right?
That's how I got to Seattle. So
Yeah, we all did. I came to Seattle because Microsoft hired me.
okay.
I was in Silicon Valley, and I got to Silicon Valley because I used to work for DEC. This would have been 95, 96. And then DEC was plummeting. It was just sort of disintegrating and doing, not well at all. And then my boss, who was the vice president of hardware engineering in the server division of DEC, he moved to Silicon Valley. And I didn't get along with his boss. So I called up my previous boss and said, Hugh, you have to get me out of here.
Sure.
So I said, come work for me in the Silicon Valley. And that's how I ended up there.
Yeah. How has the industry evolved over the years, especially as AI has come in? I'm sure the industry's gone far more sophisticated, but are there any other shifts that are happening because of AI?
Maybe there are 3 shifts I can talk about. One was when everything started to get connected to everything else, i.e. the internet.
Yeah.
When that happened, suddenly security became super important.
Annoying Norton antivirus phase. Yeah.
And firewalls and the notion of encrypting traffic and things like that. So the internet changed everything cybersecurity wise. Right?
Yeah.
Prior to that, there wasn't that much understanding of the value of
I
security.
think average people even today have no idea about even basics of network security. They're logging into their banks on a public Wi-Fi network. They have no antivirus on their computer. So at least as far as the general public is concerned, I don't think there's been any evolution of their basic knowledge.
In a way, though, I think that's okay because you want security to be a part of the substrate.
Sure.
You don't want, and you shouldn't have to rely on consumers to get security. Right?
Fair.
Because if you're relying on them, that's going to be a disaster.
Sure.
The idea is that the providers of machines and operating systems and the providers of services should do the right things and make sure that consumers, i.e. their customers, are protected. And by the way, they're not doing a good job of that. I mean, look at how many compromises we've had and how everybody's PII has been stolen over and over again.
Yeah, PII being personally identifiable information.
Which is,
so you said internet was the first big shift.
Right.
What was the next one?
The second thing was e-commerce, which followed it fairly quickly.
Sure.
When money, big money, and buying began to happen on the internet. So people started doing banking on the internet, buying and selling stuff on the internet, doing transactions of all kinds. I remember the very first, what was that? A B2B, what were they called? B2B commerce firms, B2B exchanges. There was this huge transaction of $1 billion, right? The first time somebody bought something that big, I think it was a energy transaction on the internet. It became clear that this is serious.
Yeah.
I mean, a huge chunk of the commerce is happening on the net.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the third one is AI.
Yeah.
And the AI, the changes haven't quite settled in yet. So we don't know what changes we will end up with by the time we're done with this.
Yeah. It's almost like the late 90s, the e-commerce boom where everybody is trying to take AI into their spaces and seeing what sticks, what's gonna work, what's not gonna work, and then some macro trends will emerge, and maybe it won't take as long as it took previously because these cycles get faster and faster, I feel. Going back to the e-commerce point, as a consumer, I still feel, because I can only compare the US and Canada and India, the three places I've spent a lot of time. In general, Indian banking security is better because of the simple OTP. And you need an OTP to do, I don't know, breathe literally in India. And I don't see OTPs as prevalent here. Do you have any thoughts on that? And if so, then why that may be the case? Because it's such a simple tool to implement.
I'm at risk of veering off into really geeky stuff here.
Go for it.
I'll briefly touch on it.
Yeah.
OTP is actually not the best way of doing
Okay.
security.
Okay.
In fact, in my last company where I worked, I would interview any SaaS provider and say, what is your second form of authentication?
Multifactor authentication.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're using OTP, you're not getting it right.
Okay.
Because it's a very phishable form
Interesting.
of second factor. Non-phishable forms of second factor are U2F keys or pass keys and things
Right.
like that. So that said, I'm not too familiar with Indian banking,
Yeah.
but I think at this point, at least the one Indian bank I do use, HSBC, well, it's a global bank, but I use
Right.
an Indian branch. They're all doing the same thing. And a lot of security nowadays has to not do with just your password,
Oh, yeah.
but what machine are you logging in from? What geolocation are you logging in from? What time you're logging in from,
Yeah.
etc. So there's a bunch of other signal
Yeah.
that is incorporated into the decision of whether or not
Sure.
this
So
login
if you
is
log in from a randomly different country 5 minutes later,
correct.
after you logged in from India, then they're going to
Correct.
ask
There's-
that question.
Yeah.
Interesting. There's a comedian called Vipul Goel in India, and he keeps talking about how his wife uses his credit card to shop and then keeps calling him for the OTP. And he says, I feel like OTP is obligation to Patni. And for our listeners, Patni means wife. So he makes a joke out of what the OTP stands for. Oh, cool. I don't think you got geeky at all. That was pretty simple to understand. There's a show on Netflix called Jamtara, which is about all the creative ways. I mean, it's a drama, but it's about all the creative ways that are used to scam people in India, starting with the OTP. And Jamtara is the name of the town, which is infamous for having these like sweatshop call centers
Yeah.
from where all the scams are done. So I'm gonna include a link to that in our show notes in case one of our listeners wants to hear about it. So tell me more about the various patents that you hold.
Actually, I'll say innovation. That is to say, coming up with a solution for a problem that does not yet have a solution. Right? I mean, I
Yeah.
think is a very natural thing for anybody with an engineering
Yeah.
mind. So you give me a problem and I want to solve it.
Yeah,
And companies like to patent these solutions.
Sure.
So that's how you end up with patents.
sure.
So I have a bunch. And sometimes because companies are very, let's say inclined to patent things, you end up potentially with a lot more patents than I feel excited about. Meaning I come up with an idea which I think is not hugely important,
Right.
but it gets patented. But there are a few that I'm actually quite proud of. One of those is the idea that if you use Windows, for example, there is something called P2P cache sharing.
Yeah,
Which is to say,
peer-to-peer.
you and I are, let's say, in the same office, sitting on our notebooks, and you download a patch
Yeah,
or an update to your operating system, and now I need to download it.
yeah.
I don't have to download it from the server on the net. I
Sure.
can download it from you,
From the local network.
from the local net, which is a lot faster than trying to download it from. That's based on a P2P cache sharing invention patent. Of mine.
Interesting. In the case of patents which are highly commercialized, is it common for companies to share some of the spoils with the employees who came up with that design?
You get
Or the
these
idea?
nice cubes. I have a bunch of these granite cubes from
Yeah.
Microsoft or these plaques from Amazon.
Yeah.
Another one that I'm somewhat proud of is there is an Amazon product called Guard Duty, which is based on a patent and a prototype that I wrote. And the idea was an insight that when you're trying to examine traffic being received at a machine or being sent from a machine, but the traffic is encrypted, so you can't quite see. Imagine you're listening to a conversation between two people in a language that you don't understand.
Right.
That's really what encrypted
Right.
traffic is. Well, it turns out that just the nature of the traffic, the shape of the traffic, the packet size, the ratio of sent and received packets, the gaps between packets, that can tell you what is the nature of the conversation. So you can discern, let's say, somebody watching a movie, which is going to look very different from somebody surfing the web,
Yeah.
which is going to look very different from somebody attacking a site.
Sure.
So that was an insight based on which I have a patent.
And being from a non-engineering background, for me, if you ask me what a patent is, it's like, oh, the person who invented the tripod. Like, it's always very material things you can hold in your hand. Like, oh, like someone who invented a car. But I think within a car, there'll be hundreds or thousands of patents for all sorts of things.
That's right.
Some of those are technology, some of those are actual hardware.
Exactly right. I mean, in a car, for example, there are patents for internal combustion engines, how to discern the right mix of fuel and air. How do you compute that? So, yeah, that's not a physical thing you can hold, but that's an idea which can be reified, which can be implemented in something.
So potentially, the wheel could be a patent. The mix of the rubber in the wheel could be a patent.
Oh, yeah.
And the process by which that mix is made, it could be a patent.
Oh, yeah. There are, in fact, patents called process patents.
Okay.
So it's not a thing that you build, but it is how you do something.
I have a unique way of organizing hangers in my closet. Can I get a patent for
You
that?
absolutely can. By the way, the patent office will let you patent whatever the hell you like because they don't care. It's revenue for them. You pay them a fee for it.
Yeah, I read that there was a time earlier in the, I think, 20th century when the office closed down in the US because there was nothing left to invent. I don't know if it's fact checked, but I read it in one of those like 1001 interesting facts kind of books. And obviously, the pace of innovation has only multiplied exponentially since then.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. This was very interesting. So let's take a short break. And when we come back, I want to talk about high-level discussion about cryptocurrency. And then we'll go into our weekly segments and then end the show. So stay tuned for these messages. Welcome back to Diaspora on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from South Asia. We're talking to Khaja Ahmed, inventor and cybersecurity expert. And before we jump back into the conversation, if you like listening to our show, please consider following us on Instagram or leaving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. So, one of your recent assignments was with Gemini, a cryptocurrency exchange. Obviously, there is a lot of divided opinion about cryptocurrency. I personally don't partake because I don't partake in anything I don't understand well enough. Could you give us a 1-minute primer on what a cryptocurrency is?
Sure. Let's talk about it from the perspective of the value it claims to offer.
Yes.
The value cryptocurrencies purportedly offer is that you have a medium of exchange, a method of storing value and exchanging value, which does not require an authority. There is no government, there is no central authority, there is no company.
Right.
So without depending on any organization or institution, by depending on just the underlying math, right, the mathematical properties of this thing, you can create a currency, which is a beautiful idea.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic idea.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought up those two things, the store of value and the medium of exchange. And that's one of the reasons why I was personally skeptical. And today I'm not saying I'm still skeptical or I'm optimistic. I haven't thought about it in a long time. Like US currency, like dollar, is usually backed by some sort of gold reserve.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Right.
That was the original kind of motive or original plan. But also all these currencies are widely exchangeable. Like even if people don't take cash anymore, they still take US dollars as. So do you think in general cryptocurrencies have lived up to those two things, given like volatility of price and not everyone accepting it? And if so, which particular currencies have done that?
You know, the fascinating thing about value is things have value not because of anything intrinsic to it.
Sure.
But things have value if enough people believe they have value.
Sure.
Right? So cryptocurrencies have value because there's enough people who believe
Right.
they have value. Diamonds have value because enough people want that. You can buy a synthetic diamond now
Yeah.
for a fraction of the price, and you can
Yeah.
make them in bulk.
Yeah.
But people believe that real diamonds have better value, even though they're completely indistinguishable from a synthetic diamond,
Right.
because people believe it. Right?
That's a very
So
interesting
that's
way to
what-
look at it. Because I always would think if this is not a currency and people are investing in it and holding it, then it's an asset. And if it's an asset, what is the value based on? Because like a company you can value, saying this is a cash flow, this is, machinery they hold. So I always wondered, but I never thought of it the way you said it, that if enough people believe there is value, then there is value. But won't that lead to more volatility though?
Not by itself, I don't think.
Okay.
There could be events that cause mass perception to shift one way or the other.
Right.
So, as an example, if governments broadly decided that they're going to try and penalize ownership and holding and
Sure.
usage of cryptocurrencies,
Yeah.
well, then the value is going to fall.
Yeah, that makes
Uh,
sense.
So, barring some external event like that,
Yeah.
I don't see anything changing.
Okay. Do you think it will just gradually become more accepted as a medium of exchange than it
That-
is now?
That's certainly been the trajectory, but to quote Mark Twain, the business of prophecy, especially about the future,
Yeah.
is very risky. So,
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. That's an interesting way to look at it. I think everything has two sides to it, and it's so polarized these days that if you're on the one side, then you only get bombarded with that side. So
Oh,
the
yeah.
people who think crypto is a scam, the algorithms are only showing them why it's a scam, and so there's not much room to see what the other side is. And this is in politics and every other aspect of life
Absolutely.
as well. Okay, cool. I just wanted to touch upon that. And yeah, as you said, it's a prophecy. Time will tell if it becomes like a mainstream source
Yeah.
of currency or not. What keeps you busy these days?
Well, I recently did this mountain biking tour around Blanc. It was a 4-day mountain biking ride.
Okay.
So for the last maybe a couple of months, I was preparing for that.
Wow.
And that was, you have in life one of the, sometimes these bucket list type of items,
Sure.
which can
Yeah.
cause you to look at life
Is
in
it
a whole
a,
different
is it like a race, or is it
Oh, no.
you planned the trip and did it yourself?
Yeah.
Our very first guest, Juhi Sinha from Vancouver, she has done the Grand Fondo Whistler multiple times. And we had talked about that in our very first episode on the show. Yeah, it's important to have these hobbies. And especially, I feel people from South Asia, they don't have enough outdoor hobbies in this part of the world. Like, they're not taking advantage of all the things that the beautiful Pacific Northwest has to offer.
Yeah.
I come across people who have been here 25 years. They're very successful. They're doing great in life, never been on the lake. And my recurring theme in the show is if you're not assimilating, it's your loss.
That's right.
And the country is getting the best of your talents, but you're not getting the best of what this country offers.
Absolutely. I'm the opposite. I'm obsessively outdoors.
Oh, yeah. In India, you can't be outdoors, even if you want to, because one, there's not as many public spaces in most cities.
Right.
And two, the AQI, the air quality is 150 on a good day.
Delhi is 350 or
Yeah.
375, which
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
insane.
And I'm like, the numbers got to be smaller to be better. And so it's like cities are competing to be higher, literally.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of factors to the AQI, but in general, I've heard that the clean air in this part of the world, Vancouver is probably slightly even cleaner. It adds like 5 years to your life because you're not like in my brother's car. He lives in Bombay. In that the screen you have in the middle, and it shows you the time. It shows you few default informations. AQI is a default information there, so it's 24/7 showing you the AQI around you, and then every time you put the window down, it spikes up to whatever it is outside, and then it slowly comes down as the AC kicks in once you roll the window up again. And I was blown away to see that it's become such a big part of your daily life where you have to. We never looked at the weather in India.
Yeah.
It was hot, or it
Yeah.
was raining, or it was hot. That's it. But like how you check the weather here, people check the AQI there religiously, and it's an unfortunate situation.
And it's not even about your length of life, it's about your quality of life. It's not, do you live to be 85 or 80? It is those
How-
80
How
years.
miserable are you?
Yeah, I mean, are you in good health? Are you able
Yeah.
to carry a bag of groceries up 2 flights of stairs? Or do you
Right.
wheeze and puff
Right.
and have a hard time doing that?
I'm coming close to 40, and I've been spending a lot more time thinking of those things. Right around my age, you can really start telling who's been taking care of their health in their 30s and who's not. So I was kind of shocked into that to take better care of myself. You've been in Seattle a very long time. How has the city changed?
You know, Bellevue was a outpost of Seattle when I first came here. And now look at the skyline.
Yeah.
It's a real city.
Yeah.
It's a vibrant, it's got a real skyline, and it's got fabulous restaurants, a choice of cuisines.
Seattleites don't think it's a city, but I do see what you're saying. When you're on the 90 bridge coming back, it's like a real town panorama that you see there.
Yeah, and frankly, at this point at least, it's a better city because sadly, Seattle's sort of the homelessness and the drugs and all of that deteriorated the quality of
So when I came from Vancouver, I found that Seattle, the premium you pay for housing in the downtown core is not worth the downtown experience. And because of the reasons you mentioned, I also found Bellevue to be not worth the downtown experience because it's not as walkable as, very few cities in North America as walkable as Vancouver is. But I found that it was not. So then we just finally took the plunge and moved to the suburbs. And with a young child, that's kind of, now we've kind of grown into it. But yeah, I agree with you that the Seattle downtown isn't as attractive as it used. Has the mix of people changed?
Oh, yeah. It's Mumbai now, right? I mean, so Lincoln Square runs mostly Indian movies.
Yeah.
And in multiple languages like Tamil and Telugu and Hindi movies. When I came here 22 years ago, I think there was one theater somewhere in Kirkland where you could go see Indian movie. But now it's,
South Asians make up a significant percent of the foreign-born population of Seattle, and with the tech heaviness.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I started this podcast is because everyone I meet here, because as a new immigrant and as a South Asian, those are the people you're going to meet when you are new to a city. So I would get asked, not even what do you do, I would get asked, what software team are you on?
That's right.
Because that was the assumption that obviously, so I would get a kick out of saying, please guess what I do. And at that time, I was expanding warehouse network for Amazon. So it was a real estate / zoning / permitting / construction / procurement role. Very broad role, dealing with the 200 teams that take part in taking a piece of land and having the first package roll in 18 months later. So the next guess would be, you're like a TPM, technical program manager, or a PMT or product manager. So, no, I'm not that. So few guesses later, I'd be like, well, I'm one of the 4 Indian people in Seattle who's not in tech. And I launch warehouses as a job. Like, oh, so you're a civil engineer. I'm like, get the engineering piece out of your head. There's other professions. And now I stepped away from that to own a property management company. So the first question is, wait, how did your visa allow that? Because everybody's on a work visa. And then I say, from Canada, so I have other options available that people here don't. And then they say, like, why property management? Like, because there's not many Indian people doing that. So it's always an interesting conversation when I meet the usual techie kind of Amazon, Microsoft crowd. And it continues to surprise people. And then I say, I have a podcast. And then that's like mind blown.
It is a pretty extraordinary thing. And by the way, having been on this, I think it's fantastic that you're doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think immigrant conversations are very important these days.
For sure.
I also want to provide more context to people here, how incredibly diverse India is a country and how different Indians are from different parts of India. But at the same time, how they have things that are common with Americans here. So kind of bridge that gap of knowledge and understanding. Because I always explain it that it's like Europe. Every 500 kilometers, everything changes.
Right.
And
language, cuisine,
everything.
Signs.
And just like Europe, we all hate each other and we banter at each other. And the Maharashtrians don't like the Biharis coming and the British don't like the Romanians coming. So there's so many similarities. But it's just one giant country that happens to be not a continent in different countries. So that was kind of the goal of starting the podcast. And as we move, this will be the 23rd episode. We've got immensely good reception from just generally the people who listen to it. We've got no shortage of guests who want to come on the show and are very happy to come on the show, which I'm very, very grateful for. And yeah, it's just been a very fun but fulfilling endeavor so far.
I'm really glad you're doing this and I think it might help new immigrants understand what the immigrant experience here is.
Yes.
It might help those who are, immigrants of, let's say, 5 generations ago.
Yeah.
So people whose families migrated 5, 10 generations ago, they might understand what makes America great.
Yeah. I've also had folks who are from South Asia who moved 80 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
And their image of India is from India 80 years ago.
That's right.
Or 60 years ago. And we try to share how much India has also changed at the
That's
same time. So on that note, any advice for someone who's coming today to the US?
Embrace the local culture. Keep yourself open to all manner of experience. I feel this about myself today, that I'm split right down the middle.
Yeah.
I'm as American as I am Indian. I'm not just Indian.
Yeah.
And I'm not just American.
Sure.
I'm both, and I'm really grateful for that. I feel that I'm a richer person because
of course.
The ability to absorb both these cultures.
Yeah.
Both these cultures have a lot to offer.
Of course.
But there is some baggage in India that you should be prepared to shed.
Yeah.
And not everything that is American is wonderful, so you don't have to adopt everything.
Yeah.
But if you can be eclectic about this and pick the best of both worlds, you will end up in a much better spot.
100%. Absolutely. That's great advice. Let's move on to our weekly segments now. And let's spin the wheel and see what we land on. Twice in a row, we have mango memories. So people from our part of the world tend to be passionate about mangoes and have really core memories, especially from childhood. So what's your favorite mango memory?
My dad worked in a little town called Sangareddy. He was a civil surgeon. He was the chief surgeon of the hospital in Sangareddy.
Yeah.
Which is about, I think, 30 miles from Hyderabad. And that happens to have the world's largest mango research facility.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, and if I remember rightly, there were like 230, 250 varieties of mangoes. So I decided I'm going to eat every one of those and decide for myself which is the best.
Your own mango research.
Yeah, so I don't think I made it through all 250 or whatever.
Sure.
But I sure made a great dent in it. We'd get these, people would bring these baskets of mangoes.
Yeah.
And I'm just horrified when I think about how many I could eat at a time.
Yeah.
I could comfortably eat 6, 7 mangoes.
Yeah, my personal record is 6 before my mom put a stop to it. But I could have probably eaten more. Any favorite varieties of mango?
Pedarasal.
Oh, that's a new one which we have not yet.
It's those massive, juicy things.
Yeah. We usually get Banganapalli as a favorite or Hafus, depending on which part of the country you're from.
Yeah.
I personally like Rajapuri. We grows in our farm in Gujarat. We have an organic farm with about 800 mango trees. And we have Kesar and Rajapuri there. So, awesome.
I'll say notable mentions.
Please do.
Himayati.
Heard of that one.
And Benishan.
Benishan.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to look up all these and post links on the show notes if we can. So, our listeners can understand our obsession with mangoes. Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening to Diaspora. We hope you enjoyed hearing Khaja's fantastic story. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the topics discussed in today's episode. Diaspora is part of the Speaking Current network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Speaking Current network of shows, including Diaspora, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. Remember to subscribe and not just watch the video. And lastly, if you know someone who has a story that can be shared on our show, please feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media handles. We'll be back next week with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora. Until then, take care and stay curious. And Khaja, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me on this show. Enjoyed it immensely.